Regardless if you're a costume designer or a casual sewer, you'll be all too familiar with this picture. Mountains and mountains of scrap fabric, failed projects, and tiny, tiny strips that you have no clue what to do with. Now, I still haven't come up with the best way to get rid of it all, yet, but hopefully today I can show you one way that will make a small dent in that pile that you actually might find useful, and that you actually might enjoy. To make these hair accessories, I've picked a few of my favourite styles to recreate. First is a square headscarf. Second is a classic scrunchie. And third is an elasticated headband. I then sorted all of my fabric by style, so I knew exactly what I was making with what fabric. I didn't get to all of these today, but I will in the future. And then you are going to need elastic. Not this much, but you'll need it. The first thing I wanted to tackle was disassembling this silk shirt that has a huge tear in the gusset, because I really wanted to make a square scarf out of it. Unfortunately, I realized really quickly that there was not going to be enough of a one panel of fabric to make it, and I didn't want a seam in my headscarf. So I decided to make something else. So I decided to cut a 12 by 3 inch rectangle and then two 2 by 3 inch rectangles with a little triangle at the bottom, so I could make these little dangly bits coming off a scrunchie. I've seen these scrunchies before in the store and really wanted to try and recreate them, and I thought the 100% silk fabric would look very pretty. I then cut a strip of elastic the same size as a hair tie I had lying around because I thought it would be a relatively good length for an elastic. Folding each item right side together, I clipped along all the edges in preparation for sewing. So my second fabric that I had that I wanted to make a headscarf out of also didn't have enough fabric, so third time's a charm. The only thing that I made a mistake with is that when cutting it, I didn't leave a seam allowance. Make sure you leave seam allowances, people. It did make it a little bit smaller, but it still fit around my head, so we're good. The next item I wanted to tackle was the elasticated headband. I cut a rectangle around 23 to 24 inches by 3 inches wide because I wanted a relatively thick headband when it was folded. I then cut an elastic around 6 inches that was roughly the same stretch length as the headband that I had already purchased. And then I pinned this one right sides together just like I did with the other one. I repeated the process for the green one, but I actually made this one a little bit thicker, about 4 inches wide, because I wanted another thicker headband. Then moving on to the scrunchies, they were very simple to make. You can make these any thickness, any length you want, as long as your stretch length of your elastic isn't longer than the length of your scrunchie. Then pin this right sides together, just like you would with all the others. So to summarize, we have 2 elasticated headbands, 2 regular scrunchies, 1 scrunchie with like tendril dangly things, and a square headscarf. Let's get to the sewing. I would like to preface this with, you do not need to use an overlocker. It was just my preference, but if you would like to do this without an overlocker, all you'll need to do is fold the edges, press them like you would a normal hem, and then hem them with a straight stitch all along your edges. But for me, because I did have an overlocker, I just serged all the edges of the headscarf with the same seam allowance on the edges, a very small one because I realized that I didn't put a seam allowance on this one as I was sewing it, and voila, it was very simple, very easy to make, and all I had to do was that. It took like less than 10 minutes in total to make this item. Also, always tie your threads off, regardless if you're using a sewing machine or an overlocker. The process of overlocking all of the edges for the scrunchies and the headband is pretty similar. Basically, you just serge along the long edge all the way down right sides together because you're gonna flip them inside out later. If you don't have an overlocker, as I said, just sew this. You can do a zigzag stitch and a straight stitch if you're worried about fraying to sort of create that serge effect, but it's up to you. A tip that I realized halfway through that I should have been doing and then I kept forgetting was serging the short edge before I serged all the way down the long edge. Basically, this will help keep those edges from fraying as well if you're concerned about that. This process was very similar and very repetitive, but was very, very quick and very easy to do. After this, you just want to turn all of your loops around so that your seams are on the inside and press them. Moving over to the sewing machine, this is where I was trying to salvage this edge of this silk because I didn't want it to fray after I sewed it all together, and it was very difficult and it turned out a bit messy, but that's what happens when you don't do that before you sew the seam closed. To attach the dangly silk bits onto the scrunchie, I sewed them to the inside of the scrunchie where the edges will meet. I then threaded the elastic all the way through the loop. Oh my gosh, it took so long. And pulled it out the other end, and then attempted to sew the two elastics together while being free from the scrunchie. And this was a really, really bad idea because it just looked so messy. And yeah, but I did it anyway, and it's probably gonna fall apart. But anyway, I decided to sew the seam closed all along the edge. And this was even messier than what I did with the elastic, and I don't know why I did it, but you can't really tell when it's in my hair, but it's just not what I wanted it to be. Moving on, I decided to sew the rest of the scrunchies by hand because it will create a much neater process. I threaded the elastic through just like with the silk scrunchie and decided instead to sew the elastic together, I tied the elastic very, 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 very tightly together at the end. I found this much more secure than the zigzag stitch because it's not gonna break. Well, it could, but I've been wearing these for a week and nothing has broken yet. I then sort of slid one end inside the other and then hand sewed very, very lightly around the edges there. This only really took about 10 minutes on average for each item. I thought it was going to take much longer. I'm not the best hand sewer. If you are a good hand sewer and you're seeing this, you're probably cringing, but I did find it turned out to create a much nicer scrunchy silhouette. So I repeated this for all of my other scrunchies. And I decided to make a bonus one out of the green tartan because I love it. For the elasticated headband, you need to thread your elastic about 6 inches into one end of the fabric and 6 inches into the other, and then sew those in place at the ends of the elastic. This will create a gathering effect for the back of the headband, and then you can hand sew the ends of the fabric together like you would for the scrunchies. I'm sorry if that sounds a little complicated, but it was a little bit difficult to film because it was very fiddly. I then repeated the same process for the green headband. First up is the square headscarf. I styled it with this blue top that has a similar watercolor flower pattern, and I absolutely love wearing these at the moment. Just keep in mind if you are making one out of a thicker fabric, you might have to shimmy it around your head a little bit to get it to sit right, because sometimes the thicker fabrics can sit a little bit awkwardly. Next up is the 60s headband. Oh my gosh, it's so cute. I actually made a dress out of this fabric last year, and I don't know why I didn't make a headband to match at the time because oh my gosh, this pattern is so cute. I'm obsessed forever. Here is what the dark green headband looked like. It was much thicker and sort of covers my ears a bit more, so it's going to be great for winter and those chilly days. And I love styling this pattern with this bright red t-shirt because it makes the red on the tartan pop so much. And here is the bonus little scrunchie that I made as well. This is the silk scrunchie that I made with the dangly bits. I am so happy with the length of the scarf part because I find the ones bought in store are always way too long for my hair, and you can't even tell that I made a mistake by not hand sewing this one. It doesn't look that bad. This is the velvet scrunchie, and I would highly recommend, if you have any velvet fabric lying around, making a scrunchie out of it because it doesn't tangle your hair at all. I also paired it with this top that has a green leaf in it, which is the same color, which I thought was a really cute idea. And finally, we have the light green tartan scrunchie, which I absolutely love the pattern of, but I do find it is a little bit tight when tying my hair up, so I would note that to make your scrunchies longer than you think you need them. Anyway, that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you got some fun ideas to get rid of your scrap fabrics. I will be honest with you guys, making scrunchies was actually so easy to make. I would highly recommend doing it. Thank you so much for watching the video, and I will see you next time.